And we are live. Hello, guys. Welcome to SEO Collective. Woo! So we're currently being live streamed to YouTube. It is awesome to be here. If you guys don't know, but my name is Nik Ranger. I am the co-host. I'm usually here with the wonderful Peter, Mead and Saijo George, but due to COVID, unfortunately, both of them can't be here, and also because Peter fell off his bike. So we're going to raise a glass in Peter's honor, of course. Yeah. All right. So as this is the first in-person live event, I just want to, firstly say thank you so much to EasyGo Gaming for hosting us. I'm just going to also do this because I'm just going to go present a view because that's much nicer for me. But I would also like to pay my respects at the moment. SEO Collective acknowledges the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the first inhabitants and the digital custodians of the lands in which we live, work, and live. Work. There we go. That's what we do. We honour their connection to the lands and pay respects to their elders past and present. And what a really, really nice way of being able to do this again for the first in-person event for SEO Collective. Ooh. A little bit of housekeeping. Again, we are being hosted by EasyGo Gaming in this wonderful, beautiful office. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much to the staff who are here providing things for us. Oh, and the CEO is right there. yeah, a bit more of that. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is awesome. Of course, I would also like to say thank you very much to Jasmine Ailes, who is also acting as our COVID officer, ensuring all of our safety here tonight. So everyone here is, double vaxxed and is ensuring everyone's safety, which is awesome. A little bit of housekeeping. So we'll just do a bit of an agenda run through what to expect for the event tonight. So obviously I'm just, talking here as the introduction. We were supposed to kick off at 6. My apologies. I have no concept of time or awareness of space. But after that, we're going to go through some SEO news. And of course, it has been a really, really interesting January. Going to go through the algorithm updates that did happen, or a suspected one. I don't think it's necessarily been confirmed, but when does Google ever confirm any of these things?
With 4 core updates a year.
Yeah, and heaps of updates.
Oh, yeah.
Loads of updates. So another update, but it has been a bit of a big one. And of course, just talking a little bit about that SERP volatility. We have our very, very good friend, Peter Macinkovic, ladies and gentlemen. And we are very, very honored here tonight to have him. He's going to be talking about e-commerce SEO. And if anyone knows him, I think he's an absolute legend here in Melbourne, but if anyone overseas, online, worldwide has never heard of him, do a bit of a Google because this man is a legend. He is a straight up legend and someone who I look up to immensely. And of course, after that, we get a wonderful Q&A session with Peter. And then we'll be following that up with a nice panel, and I forgot to put that in the agenda in the slide decks because that's just not who I am. I'm not super prepared all the time, that's fine. But we will have a nice panel session with the 3 of us, including Harry Sanders, the founder of Studio Hawk, which is awesome. So again, just to be super clear, if you need to go to the bathroom, and again, we are live people, if you do need to go to the bathroom, the girls' bathroom is on this level, on level 2. This is the code. It is also at the inside of the EasyGo doorway. I am told that this is an easy place to find it. Even an idiot like myself would be able to find it, so you will be fine. Men's toilets are located on level 1, so down a level on the lefts or through 2.
No, it's just one.
Staircases?
If you're going down 1 flight of stairs, it's 1. If you go down to the ground, then it's like 4.
Yes. But the men's toilets, my apologies, they are on the level below us. And again, these are the codes. Again, you can find them at the door. Any issues, of course, you can speak to any of the lovely people that are helping us out today. Yeah. Okay. Very, very quick shout outs. Of course, SEO Collective has a history. It was formerly SEO Meetups. And we pay our respects to a wonderful host of people who have been in my place before, who have done all this. We're now a board, which is really cool. We're modernizing. But we would like to invite all of you here to be in touch with our community. So we are on LinkedIn. We're also on a very active Slack channel. Loads of jokes there. And it is really, really great to be able to put any new updates, if you're seeing any SERP volatility or anything like that. We are literally on this all the time. So if you've got some questions, you can be able to direct message any of us. And it's a really, really awesome thing to be able to do. And also any network connections and things like that you want to be able to make after the fact, you can be able to say hello to us. So that we are on Slack, we are on LinkedIn, and of course, we are on YouTube. So like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Yeah, we're doing this in person. The collective growing is.
So everyone open up your phone.
Yeah, there we go. Alrighty. Without further ado, I'm going to go straight to the SEO news. So, of course, this is usually with Saijo George, but again, like I said, he can't be here tonight. But we've had a really, really interesting month that has been for January in SEO. So if you want to be able to subscribe to his newsletter, that is the link, tldrmarketing.com/subscribe to our newsletter. And you can get daily updates, you can get a really, really great snapshot as things are happening, as things are unfolding. It is a really, really nice collection just pulling the meniscus of just all of the white noise. And it is really, really great to be able to stay on top of things. Okay, so getting straight into it. So possible January 2022 algorithm updates. Of course, with any of these things, the three usual suspects are always going to be the relevancy adjustments, intent shifts, keywords, what they mean to search engines versus what we think we're trying to optimize for. EAT and quality signals. This should be no surprise to anyone here. And of course, site underperformance, technical issues, all kinds of other stuff.
For people who don't know, what does EAT stand for?
EAT stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Of course, I've got a couple of members of my team here. I've been jumping up and down about this for no end. But this is a massive thing. It comes from the Google Quality Raters Guidelines. And this is a 177 now PDF document that is really detailing exactly what Google is wanting to educate all of its manual people going through and seeing this stuff and trying to actually tell people what it means by quality. And this affects all YM, YL sites. Your money, your life. So, of course, this is a really, really big one. This is something that is not new at all. But, of course, there are a lot of things that we can be able to do. When we think about quality, what does quality mean? What does quality of content mean? What does quality when we're trying to serve up pages to be able to competitively rank for other keywords? Well, this really does go down to what is Google's expectation from its understanding of the public. We want to be able to make sure that anything that we click when we're organically searching for something is the most relevant. So say, for example, crypto. Now, this is something that it changes all the time. And you want to make sure that the most authoritative voices get filtered all the way up to the top. So again, EAT is absolutely massive for you guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking like, yeah.
You're looking for a debate or something?
No. Just like furious nodding. Love that. Love that. But just to go into a little bit more, I'm just going to go back to all these other things because I could probably talk for about 2 hours about EAT. I think in the past I have. But yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But like when we talk about relevancy, that is like where Google has found your website to be ranking for irrelevant queries. And it's basically like, how long are you going to be able to rank for this keyword? Like if the page does not match the keywords and intents and things like that, you're going to see an impact. You've probably seen all the time, I was ranking on the first page for this particular keyword and now it's completely shifted. Well, this may not just be happening to you, but this is happening universally to you, your competitors, and everyone else trying to vie for those top positions. Google does a really, really great job of actually telling you exactly what it expects to rank for these things. And of course, with Google Mom and multimodal ways of being able to do this, there are all kinds of other things, which is, sorry, an evolution of Google BERT. Sorry if this is going over a lot of people's heads, but this is basically the algorithms that look at distinguishing how keywords find its meanings. That's really what that algorithm is all there and all about. And they've been able to refine this to a point where maybe these updates are really going after and trying to figure out like more of the nuances between this, and to be able to say, well, you know what, this keyword actually means that this, based on our more granularity of these algorithms, because the machine learning has gone through over time and figured out all these things and collected all these little bits of information. And we feel like these are strong enough signals to change. And that's what we sort of see with these updates and things like that. So again, a lot of people chattering on the Twitter and chattering in the search and things like that. I'm saying chattering on search, chattering on Twitter mainly. Are basically saying, okay, what we saw from January, I saw a lot more rich snippets and like snippet information filtering through the SERPs. A lot more of this stuff happening. That could be Google Mom in action there, which is really going after a lot of these different entity understandings. This could also be, oh, I saw like massive impacts on my traffic, and massive spikes and massive drops and massive increases on my keywords. Now, when we're looking at this stuff, again, how to check for algorithm updates. I'm going to do this one, sorry. Check your Search Console. Your Search Console is the best way you can be able to look at this stuff at scale. You'll be able to see year on year, month on month, the changes. If something is decreasing, increasing, you can be able to see this. Of course, analyze what queries and what landing pages have dropped, because again, without knowing exactly where this is being attributed to, you need to be able to look at this stuff. But when you're looking at the queries, look at the page and look at the top 10 results in the SERP. How do you stack up? Where is that benchmark? Go, like, think more about not, oh, woe is me, like I've been demoted by Google, Google hates me. It's more like, this is a standard that you must reach. Okay, how do we not just meet this standard, but how do we surpass that? Is there a signal on this? Is there a quality on this that is not good enough? And again, this is really what we're seeing at scale all across different industries. They do affect things, and of course, every single time that we're looking at this, SEMrush Sensor is really, really great to be able to do this. More locally, Algorithms is great to do this. Rank Ranger is great to be able to look at these changes and things like that. But you can be able to see the commonalities and use that logic to be able to reverse engineer and think about that more, more analytically. Cool. I think this Google Office Hours Hangout kind of summarizes this pretty well, because I am kind of just speaking a little bit more broadly here about the logic around this stuff. But really, your logic is what you hone as an SEO. It's kind of tricky because with the core updates, we don't just focus on just individual issues, but rather the relevance of the website overall. And again, as a technical SEO, I don't just look at maybe like single pages and single queries all the time. I think, okay, what's the bigger picture here? How well is this being able to crawl? How well is this being able to index? What are my inhibitors like? What are things that we can be able to do better? And this isn't just necessarily thinking about core web vitals or anything like this, but it could all the way be back to like, do I have any server issues that Search Console picking up? That's going to play a big part. So again, this is a really, really great thing to be able to just remember. And this is John Mueller, if no one knows who that is. John Mueller from Google. Whew, it's smoky up here. February. So this is, I said that we'll be talking about January, but I kind of want to also talk about what's happening for this month. We are the 1st of February right now, and they've announced that there's going to be a page experience update for desktop. So we've lived through this. We've had a lot of notice about this with the mobile updates. But of course, they're now rolling it out to desktop. And kind of where, again, like from a logic standpoint, like why would they do these kinds of updates? They want to make sure that from, like, people don't just focus on mobile. Like, still remember that desktop is still something there and relevant. If you look in Google Analytics, you'll still see that a shit ton of your users are probably going through desktop.
Yeah, more during COVID as well, because everyone's working from home on their desktops.
That's a really, really great point. If that wasn't transferring through with COVID, everyone's still a large percentage of your users are using desktop. But this is kind of exactly the same as a mobile first update, but again, without obviously like the mobile friendliness thing. But a really, really big one here, absence of intrusive interstitials. I'm going to talk about, I'm looking at someone in particular who we've gone to battle with the devs over this one, but intrusive interstitial pop-ups. That is, if no one knows what that is, it's like that really, really annoying pop-up that goes immediately on the page. You'll see it everywhere. Look, there are ways to be able to do this, but I think in 2016, Google came out and said, you'll get a penalty if you use this like everywhere because users don't want this. Not only that, Google doesn't have like a magic, like click the X button. It doesn't have that. So if you're seeing like massive drops, and we've seen this in our clients before, where they put in these intrusive interstitial pop-ups, a little bit of a mouthful to say, but it'll actually like really like directly affect your rankings and traffic because again, all that Google sees is not all the beautiful content and all the hard work that you put onto your websites. They'll just see this really annoying pop-up, just be like, hey, can you sign up to our newsletter? What? So that's kind of annoying. For everything else, again, largest contentful paint. These are core web vitals here. Cumulative layout shift, first endpoint delay, HTTPS security. I'm doing a bit of a talk about core web vitals.
You're going to talk about the new ones, the smoothness and what?
Well, I'm going to talk about like maybe like something a little bit more practical and say like, hey, you can cache, you can maybe like look at it down at the code level and maybe not have to serve absolutely everything on that page. Yeah, I'm very scarred from server-side rendering. Don't judge me. But again, this is all really, really fancy way of saying like, you know, are you serving the best experience for this page? How fast is it? You know, how relevant is it? All this other really, really great stuff. Again, all these different signals that we do look at. Again, I like to think about it like from a practical standpoint first. What is the best way that you can be able to work with your developers to be able to have a really good practical solution? So maybe think, you know, talk to me about that afterwards if you want to know more. Woo-hoo. Google promotes Pointy from Google in business profiles. So this is like a Google thing, Google Pointy. I'm gonna say right up right now, I don't know anything about this. This is super new. I think this is only released, or people only started recognizing that this was a thing on the 28th of January. So super new. Pointy from Google helps shoppers find the products that they need in your physical store. So essentially, like with your Google My Business, you can be able to serve your product inventories in a lot more concise way, which is great because like with Google Merchant Center, we saw a heap of new things going through and being able to add and be able to optimize there. So like the benefits of this stuff is like it's like an online product catalog that shows shoppers up-to-date product info for your store along with contact details and opening hours. I'm cheating, I'm reading completely off my notes here, but all this stuff is captured here in Google, but essentially this is something that you can be able to do in GMB if you are oh yeah, sorry. Google in business profiles. Okay, I can do that. I can do that now. You can see me in person now. I'm not just underneath the desk. Love in person, right? So much more fun. But yeah, so this will be able to affect things again like local services in Google. This is really awesome because you can be able to influence search, images, shopping, maps, Lens, and Lens is really great. We've got a couple of our friends that really love that stuff. So you can just be able to look at that and be able to have a little bit more of an interactive view with your products. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that is something that is going to be doing that. But I think I also read somewhere about this really quickly that it's only temporarily free. So use it while it's free, test it out. If you like it, cool. You might want to do an investment. Google getting money. What? Google tests search results with no descriptions again. Yeah, they always try this, but I don't understand. I honestly don't understand why they're doing this context. They haven't come out with anything saying it's a bug or anything like that, but everything needs context. Everything needs context. I mean, they did last year, like try and like use a H1 tag instead of the title tag. We already saw this. I think they're just trying to like stop people like us, SEOs, from optimizing too much, or sorry, in-house people here as well. We'll acknowledge you guys. I'm not just talking the agency folks. We got a couple others in the audience tonight. So, look, I mean, when I tested this, it's not happening here in Australia, thank goodness, for all of our clients. But it is happening in the US at the moment. I think it's just a test. If it's not a test, it's surely someone having a bit of an oopsie day. I don't know. I really don't know. But this is something that was picked up.
It's so ugly because you can't even see the URLs.
Yeah, right?
You can't see the URLs. You can and like even like this title here is getting club. Like, where's the context? Like, yeah, I'm just like criticizing the like it's just ugly. Like, well, Google sucks at doing page styles and menus. Let's just be honest. Like,
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, there's no context here. If they want to improve the search results, maybe they should just try getting rid of ads or something. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of like really miffed when they had like people also ask panels like have other URLs that weren't even the content that was that they were writing.
Like, I remember featured snippet.
Yeah.
I remember when I was optimizing featured snippets way back when. The thing about featured snippets is that they'll grab the content from your website, but sometimes they put it next to an image that isn't your image. So they'll grab like the third image on the if you went to the image search, and like it's just like two juxtaposed things that like aren't even related. So yeah, Google's a little bit random with what they choose to like showcase in the search. And yeah, we can just rant about this all day. This is like an SEO rant session.
Yeah, this is pretty much us and just like any given night, just like hanging out after work, bitching about what Google's up to. Cool. Untitled search results sending users to spam sites. Again, I'm gonna bitch about this again about like SERP results, but come on, like what is this? So obviously spam is. Oh yeah, this is stolen from Twitter. Definitely stolen from Twitter. Someone just been like, what on earth is happening? But yeah, so again, this is actually something that is legitimately a bug. Danny Sullivan from Google, who's a really, really nice guy, he actually tweeted out, it's like, hey, I'm sorry guys, this is legitimate spam. I don't know how they were able to infiltrate and be able to rank, and people are clicking on this stuff, and it's kind of been really bad, but this is really bad. This is not great. So that they are aware of it, they are fixing it. If you ever see any untitled stuff, just maybe be aware that it's probably not someone like on your team just being like, I don't know, untitled.
Are these hacked websites thick, like WordPress hacks? I remember how you dealt with that in the past with like PHP, like the Godin or something.
That's a really good question. I did not actually test any of these
Probably
URLs.
shouldn't touch the URLs with spam or.
Well, it would be really interesting just to even like put it through a Kismet or something like that, just seeing like what this is going on.
Well, because it reminds me, because I remember you talked about an issue you had in the past where like they would generate these random generated strings on a website.
Are we talking about the Japanese?
Yeah, the Japanese
Oh my
thing.
god, so insidious, so insidious. So, just sorry, we're kind of going into what this is literally like just us after work. Anyway, sorry guys, but again, this is like a little bit of JavaScript that someone will insert, and it will be able to be inserted anywhere. Like if you've got hosting that is hosting your email, that is hosting your website. I have seen it where they have via the email injected this bit of JavaScript code that has gone through and been able to, I don't know, it literally sounds like an STD for websites. But that was how we could kind of like reverse engineer and figure out where this might have come from to be injected into the website. Because again, if you ever have a hacked website, go through all your plugins, go through all of your old outdated themes,
Check
go
your
through
server logs.
get your server logs, go through all of these different checks, and again, like, talk to someone like Kismet, who's really, really awesome at doing this kind of stuff, or, even talk to Cloudflare, who've got those CDNs there in place. They have really, really great spam filters and things like that. Bit of a diversionary thing, but let's go that's going to be the news for
Do you guys
this
have any
month.
questions about any of the news items this month? Any comments?
One question. Back to those results where they didn't have like meta descriptions or anything.
Yeah.
When that happens, are they fitting more like results in the SERPs? Like,
So
could it
is it
be-
like 15?
yeah, kind of thing. Are they
Yeah, what is
testing
it,
whether, or is it still, or do we know if there's like 11 or 12, and they might be just testing to see how many actual results they can get in there?
Yeah, great question. Like from what I was seeing it with, like, say for example, the title tag being replaced with a H1 tag. A lot of these things were just like single kinds of keywords. Like if I did like a variant on that keyword, it wouldn't show up. So it would be like certain types of queries and things like that that I think that they were testing out. Again, maybe to tackle relevance and search intents a little bit more, to try and like get through the absolute just cloud white noise, or people trying to optimize their sites and thinking like, oh yeah, crypto is my favorite keyword. So sorry, it's just because I'm here. So I'll put crypto on every single page, and every single page will be just about crypto. You're actually just diluting your opportunity to be able to rank for something more granular.
Because Google would have, which page is about crypto? I see 5,000 pages
Yeah.
about crypto. Which is it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They
Yeah.
want to be able to serve the best page, and after a while, they just be like, you know what, none of these are right. I'll now look to your authority. How much does people care about you? How much time should I invest in, like, serving up any of your pages? So, again, singular queries, mainly first page stuff, because I don't ever look at the second page. Yeah, just on specific queries. And that one again was just on, from what I can see, it was only like it was on the keyword Google only in the US, and I got distracted and did something else, so I don't know other keywords. But yeah,
But people are seeing it, so watch out.
yeah. And of course, we will go to our next very amazing segment where we will have Peter Macinkovic talk about e-commerce SEO. So I will.
Do you guys want to get a quick drink or anything? Refreshments?
No good drinks.
No quick drinks.
No
We're,
quick
we're
drinks.
live.
No
We're
quick
live.
drinks. We are live.
We are
SEO
live.
doesn't stop.
All right, cool. All right. Cool. All right, thank you, Nick. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Peter Macinkovic. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the state of e-commerce SEO and how it is presently and where it's going to go in the future. So I'm just going to navigate this. Hopefully I can do the slide changes. There we go. Excellent. So hi, I'm Peter. I'm a technical SEO specialist. I work here at EasyGo Gaming. I'm the brand new SEO specialist. I've been working on the web since 2011. My first job was in digital. I worked for 2 different agencies for about 3 years, hated them both, swore off agency, which didn't actually work for the rest of my life. Working in-house for a lovely small business beauty retailer as a digital marketing manager for 4.5 years. Loved that job. Then I went back to agency, working on accounts like JB Hi-Fi, Metricon, and T2, and all these really big, exciting clients. And then now, 2022, I'm back in in-house probably for the rest of my career, doing, as Nick mentioned, the crypto and all that kind of cool stuff. But yeah, like working on EasyGo Gaming and Stake.com and all this fun stuff. You can find me on at Macinkovic. Don't ask me what it means. I picked it as a DeviantArt username in 2008 and stuck with me since. Or you can just Google my name, Peter Macinkovic. It's the hardest part is to spell it, but once you figure it out or like figure out how to spell my name, you can find me anywhere. There's not that many more Peter Macinkovics. Maybe some back in the motherland, but like not in SEO, I think. Cool. So right now I'm just going to do primer on e-commerce. It's basically explaining what motivates people to shop online and how it specifically relates to search. Excellent. So this big number here is $5.4 trillion. That is the estimated revenue worldwide that e-commerce will do this year, 2022. That they estimated. Last year was 4.2 trillion. That is what they estimated last year. That's roughly around about 14 to 15% of global GDP. Thank you. Well done. And so basically, e-commerce is big. E-commerce is getting bigger and bigger, and it shows no signs of slowing down, especially during COVID. It's looking to grow exponentially up until 2025, and then we'll see if like a meteor hits or something, and we'll see how we are. But basically, e-commerce is really, really big. It's really, really important. If you guys get to work in that exciting space, it's a place that you get to operate in that's growing. There's many opportunities for new businesses or websites to make record revenues and all that sort of thing. So let's talk about how e-commerce relates to search, both organic and paid. So 44% of all people start their online shopping with a search engine in some way, shape, or form. It could be researching. They might not be necessarily shopping. They might be looking for something there. Maybe the dog's sick or the dog's misbehaving. They need to buy something right now from Amazon, like right now, because we don't know what to do. And like, we've got this thing. So that's a little stat from N Channel. 27.5% of all e-commerce websites come from search. And depending on if you work in agency side like I used to, and well, I'm guessing probably most of you guys do as well, you probably see that it's a lot higher than 37.5% that's search is responsible for the traffic. So that's just the average. But search is a primary driver for revenue, for businesses growth, for new customer acquisition, for brand strength, for everything. And about 23.6% of all e-commerce orders are directly linked to organic traffic. Organic traffic is the invincible channel. Like basically, if you succeeded in organic traffic from an e-commerce standpoint and many other businesses, you really shouldn't fail. I mean, you could. That's up to a business structure. But basically, if you succeed online with search, it makes everything else so easy because when you rank for search, it might be expensive. You might be hiring agencies to do the work. But if you hit a keyword, it's going to be the next one, hopefully. Or unless Google has a thing to say about it, and the next one after that, and the next. So it's basically it's like having prime real estate on like CBD property. Like you can count on foot traffic. Well, pre-COVID, you can count on foot traffic to come through the door, basically. So that's what the ranking well in search engines does for you. So let's do an anatomy of the search. I picked iPhone 13 in Australia. The reason why is because I've worked quite a lot of it. And basically, we can go over what we see here. So when you search for an e-commerce related term, like iPhone 13 is a product. It's something that you can purchase right now. You actually can get the first item that you typically see would be what is called product listing ads. Product listing ads are fed by the merchant center. They're a paid carousel of ads, and they just float around there. So other items you might see is paid search ads. Those of you who know, paid search typically sits on top of the SERPs and maybe a little bit on the bottom of the SERPs. But if someone who has paid search, they can get on top of the SERPs. Their CTR is less than organic search. At best, paid search can get like 5%. They might be happy with 1 or 2% click-through rate, but getting a top organic result might be 30% or 25% click-through rate. So you can get paid search there. It's very, very cluttered in case you can't tell with this whole slide right there of like what happens in an e-commerce search. Then the next item there, you have your organic results, number one there. That is the official Apple website. I guess something's gone wrong when you copy the slides because they're like really compressed. So it's like, is this for ads? But basically, this is the top organic results, which will be the official Apple website. So when you have a product, Google kind of qualifies and scores it. And basically, the best possible page to rank for it will be the official page on the official brand on their official website. If the official website doesn't cook it, or they have an Australian website, everything's fine, they should, by right, rank for the term. It's very unlikely for someone like JB Hi-Fi to outrank Apple.com. It shouldn't happen. It can happen if you have a weak brand, basically. The next items you have is the product knowledge panel on the right. Actually, they've got top stories. If your item is particularly newsworthy, this happens to very broad searches, we might have a little carousel with top stories. Sometimes they appear higher up, sometimes they appear lower, sometimes they're in the middle of the SERPs. But they're basically, if there's news coverage that's active, and this happens to stuff that's, have a new release, or there's news about it, or there's some kind of controversy, they might populate the search. It really does depend on a keyword by keyword basis and how interesting it is, basically. On the right, which is a lot bigger, it's too big to fit on the slide, basically, is what we call the product knowledge panel. The product knowledge panel is a very special, rich, featured panel on the right-hand side of the desktop SERPs that basically showcases all sorts of e-commerce information based on that term. You see at the very top here, it's Apple iPhone 13. Apple iPhone 13 is an entity in Google's database, basically, in what is called the shopping graph. And they have all this information about the make and model, the SKUs, all these kind of things as well. You see on the right, they actually list particular listings on pricing and information that you can click on the website. I will go to the next slide because we're just running through this entire page. So now you have your first organic results that you can actually achieve. So the number one result and also a site link here, so top two results, is JB Hi-Fi. So it's still going strong after I worked on it. So basically, you have your organic results here that rank the term. They occupy some space. This is what's called a site link. Site links can sometimes be very, very small. It's a hyperlink. But what's happening recently in the SERPs, you can see it's actually being indented and basically showing a second SERP, which is the higher CTR, or doubling up on the pages. So basically you have, I think, the iPhone 13 Pro version of the page, and then I think either the main iPhone page, just based on the page style and meta descriptions, I can tell. But basically, JB Hi-Fi is making the top two, and that's the organic results. Everything in green is now organic. So once you get through all the paid stuff, the carousel, there's a lot of noise in e-commerce search. This is kind of the real estate that you as an operator can operate in. You're basically operating in the top middle part of the search engine results. The other thing that people may also ask, this is where people can change their search intent while there, because they might be searching for iPhone 13, but iPhone 13 is not very specific. Like there could be iPhone 13 warranty, iPhone 13 specs. Maybe they want to purchase an iPhone 13. Maybe they want to get a gift from their parents, or maybe they got one and they don't even know what it is. So like there's so many different things because iPhone 13 is not specific, but they can go, how much is the iPhone 13? Will I get an iPhone 13 or 14, etc., etc. So that's the other stuff there. And the product panel, knowledge panel there continues on the site because it takes up the entire page. You actually have reviews, and reviews are aggregated throughout the internet on Google and also their trusted partners. They have a list of trusted partners like Trustpilot and all sorts of third-party websites where they aggregate and get score ratings. And you can even filter them. Google's actually amassed this, like a cloud Google database where you can interact with it. And finally, the scraps. On the bottom of the search, you have some video vertical results. Depending on your search term, sometimes this might be higher. So that's why I've shown there's so many rich features in the particular search term for just one keyword. Depending on your product, depending on the type of people search for it, sometimes you might have the news at the top. Sometimes you might have videos at the top. Sometimes you might have images at the top. It all depends on your search query and the type of people. So basically, whatever people are searching for, Google are trying to guess what it is. And because iPhone 13 is quite a broad search term that has many possible permutations what someone is actually searching for, Google is basically doing like a homepage design. Like you go to a website, they might show like a carousel, and like here's our latest offers, or here's our special, or they might show like this section, that section. That's what Google is doing with broad search terms. They're basically giving you a platter, and you pick and choose what you want, and you can better funnel yourself to what you're truly searching for. It's there to serve the searcher. We also have the image pack there for image search. And then rounding it up, we also have related searches and those kind of things. This particular result is really interesting because typically related searches is little bubbles in the bottom, but this is actually an expandable accordion, basically, where they actually have like little panels of related searches here, but also different permutations. Some of it's quite wrong. It says like iPhone something in the USA, which is just off. But basically, Google is doing everything it can to kind of guess what you're actually searching for when you search iPhone 13. And these are all the options it's presenting for you. Cool. So let's now look at the anatomy of an e-commerce website. So just a quick show of hands. How many of you people work in e-commerce or work on it like regularly? All right, cool. That's basically almost everyone except for Ed. So excellent. So yeah, so e-commerce, most of you guys probably purchased something, especially during COVID, but it's got a couple of core components that's pretty common across a lot of websites. So in the e-com industry, when you get used to the lingo, we break it down to basically 3 different types of pages, really 2, but I just put landing page there because like that's basically all the other pages. First of all, you have the PLP. The PLP stands for Product Listing Page. When you talk to the e-commerce manager, or you talk to anyone who works in e-com, this is the language that they use, so you have to make sure that you're communicating it the way that they speak. If you speak to developers, you speak to your team members, sometimes you might call it a category page, a collection page, etc., etc. But e-com people call it PLP, and it's best to know what the language it is. So a product listing page, PLP, is basically a category page. I'm just going to call it category because it's easier, or collection, but it's a list of products. And these pages are the best for faceted navigation with filter results, where you get a list of items you could browse. It's there for the browsing experience, it's there for multiple types of products, and it's a really, really important page for SEO as well. The second one is the PDP, the product description page. This is the individual product page. It's typically the primary mechanism for transactional content. You can have one product, it has to have several where you switch the colors and stuff like that. But basically, it's where you have there. These are nice little mock-ups I just did just to give an example of like how it would look, basically, from a structural standpoint. And finally, we have landing page, which it's basically every other page. So this could be an article, this could be a home page, this could be a custom designed landing page, like a funnel page, etc., etc. But basically, it's best for informational intent, unless it's a specific landing page where it's designed to drive like signups or something like that, or like all sorts of things. So they have 3 different purposes as well. One is more for informational intent, one is kind of a mixed bag, and one is very specific for transactions for very specific keywords. Next slide. So let's talk about optimizing a product listing page, a PLP. So PLPs are the best target for very, very broad organic terms with high search volume. That first keyword I showed you with iPhone 13, one of the highest search terms, like on a monthly basis for JB Hi-Fi, that the ranking pages there, the top two were all product listings pages. They are collections in Shopify, basically. So 2 Shopify URLs, there were a list of iPhone 13 Pro products, a list of all the iPhone products, etc., etc. That's the kind of pages they are. They can also be a viable target for informational, navigational, and transactional intent. Basically, PLPs, because of the nature of their design, they can actually target multiple types of keywords. And they're actually quite flexible, especially when you have a full-featured monstrosity like that on the side, that you can actually get a PLP to rank for several keywords for different intents. It's quite flexible because there's parts of a PLP that's about transactions, part of it is about the broader topic, part of it might be more informational at the bottom, etc., etc. But there's also great risk with a product listing page. It is the biggest risk on an e-commerce website for crawl traps and content cannibalization. This is because of filters or subcategories or duplications, cannibalization. So basically, if you ever see when you filter a website and you have query strings in it, or if you're designing a website navigation, you have a men's category, say a perfumes category. Well, you might, in a men's category, you might have /men/perfume. But in a perfume category, you might have /perfume/men. Congratulations, you created 2 exact same pages. Which one's going to rank? So essentially, you might have logic, basically circular logic, where you're creating the same thing over and over again, where things need to be consolidated. So it is the easiest place to get trapped in an e-commerce website, and you can hurt yourself by creating too many duplicate pages or creating pages where Google's literally crawling forever. Next slide. So core components to optimize. So highlighting at the very, very top, the most important thing I actually strongly recommend is having breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs provide a strong hierarchy of links. It communicates who the parent category is, who the children categories are, and it provides that context there. So very simple: home, computers, laptops, gaming laptops, HP laptops, HP Omen, very, very specific and granular. We want to have a primary context. So the way that we did it at my agency that we were at previously was that we had a main title of the page, so laptops, main title, H1. We only have one H1 on the page, ideally. And then we had a text, what we call a text box, a piece of plain text right underneath the main heading that was at the very top of the page. We used to say above the fold, but really what is the fold these days? But like high up on the page, before the list of products, basically. And we never hyperlink in this. We actually do all of our hyperlinking elsewhere on the page. We believe that this should be human readable. And the best way to describe this to clients and people is basically, if you can imagine the sentence being read to you from an Alexa or Google Assistant, then it's actually kind of a good text box. It describes what the page is about. And the purpose of this page is to include keywords and that kind of thing, but it's actually to provide the immediate context for the crawler. Understand that this is a page about laptops and this is what a laptop is. That's fundamentally what it is. And then you have the primary related links. We call these many different names, browse links or this and that, essentially. But these highlight the most similar pages and the most important pages that are related to this particular page. And these are right at the very top. Like we have them right underneath the text box A. So we're in the laptop category, we have MacBooks, Windows laptops, 2-for-1 laptops. In more specific categories, we might have individual brands as well. So you can either have the children pages, so these are pages that belong to the parent category, or if you're deep enough, and I'll talk about it later, you might have what is called sibling links. You structure your website there. It's a really, really important mechanism because you are what you're linked to, and internal linking is actually one of the great hacks of like having Google understand what the website is, what pages are important, and you get a lot of your movement on your rankings by just improving your internal linking. Next slide. So then, of course, the important thing is the product listing, right? Capitalize that R. So basically, you provide a list of products in the view. I recommend adding as many products as is reasonable. So I think JB Hi-Fi does 36. We love clients to do 50, but it's always a trade-off. Sometimes it takes longer for the page to load. If you have like 50 or 100 pages, or if you load like 1,000 pages, like at EasyGo, we have like a similar thing with casino games. It's like 2,000 slot games or something like that. It's crazy. So like you wouldn't load all 2,000 at once. It would just be insane, right? So they'll load a certain amount. You just load more, load more, load more. So basically, a similar concept here with product listing pages. You will load your initial list. The products that appear in the first page of this page are the ones that are going to benefit the most from SEO. Every single time we launch a product, like say, for example, we were in the speakers category, we launched like a product called Sonos Arc, which is like a soundbar, I guess. And because that was a featured item or pre-order, it was all in, like, it was in the audio category, the speakers category, in the soundbars category, 3 top major categories. There's no surprise that the product page ranked very, very quickly because that product page is like front and center on all the most important pages. So these are really, really critical for like the most important pages of your website to be crawled. These can be affected greatly by filters, faceted navigation, and pagination. So when people go to page 2, when people filter, those kind of things, that will change the layout. And you have to decide whether or not Google can or should crawl these pages as well, because you can get out of hand unless you're really, really controlling things deliberately. The last part of this page, or maybe there might be one more slide I forget, is the rich content of the bottom. So there was a presentation a couple of months ago where Andy Chadwick and Sugantham. Thank you, Nik Ranger. Yes, so Sugantham and Andy were doing a talk, and they mentioned stuff about search intent. I actually disagreed, but I think I must have been walking the dog. I couldn't write a whole essay of why I disagreed with. But Andy made a comment basically saying that you should keep informational content away from like category content or product content because Google can get confused, and you'd rather have an article, like your page's article. I really, really disagreed with him that, because I actually think that if you have a page that you're targeting a broad term, like that iPhone 13 term, then you can actually have mixed intent on the page. There's nothing telling you that you can't target transactional intent and informational intent at the same time on the page. Especially if the keyword you're going for is broad, you need to actually kind of cover it. And the other additional benefits of this, and we noticed this when we were able to do this on JB Hi-Fi, was the actual ability to interlink in this piece of rich content. Nik Ranger.
I just want to add color to that. That's actually really, that's actually a really, really good point to make. I can't help myself, sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's fine.
But say, for example, the keywords TV, televisions, right? You know, that like over the course of a year, keywords are seasonal. They'll change with intent. Like if it's like around Black Friday sales, around Christmas, around end of financial year sales. Google also knows this stuff. And search engines will know this stuff. As the intent shifts, so will the results with those keywords. So if you can be able to have like those mixed results for your pages, then you can kind of just go like, okay, on an average, like what is the kind of thing that I should be aiming for with these type of pages? Which is why above fold content, below fold content, FAQ content is awesome for category pages.
Thank you, guys. Nik Ranger. But Nick brings up a very good point. Like this rich content in the bottom, is not just there for keyword stuffing or like optimizing headlines and those kind of things. It has additional utility beyond that. You can use it to hyperlink between categories. When you do product launches, I talk about this in detail later, you can actually update them for your most important pages to talk about your newly launched products. And it helps them tremendously. Like there's a reason why we're always first with new product launches. Like we're there in the SERP and everything else is like still the informational intent. We're the first retailer each and every single time is because we establish a process that's repeatable and scalable each and every single time. Well, not so scalable, humans have to work really hard for it. But basically it's a repeatable process, and this is super valuable. It illustrates the value of content, but not just content from a ranking standpoint, from a quality standpoint and all that, but as an asset and a tool to help rankings from a more holistic level looking at SEO. It's an asset and a tool with utilization to it. So let's talk about filters and crawlability with product listing pages. So here's an example of a URL on JB Hi-Fi. So you can see here there's a query string, page equals 1, and this is good old React, right? So like hits per page, like it's using a thing called, oh goodness, I forgot the name, Algolia. It's using Algolia for filters. Well, guess what? Google can't call that URL. And the reason why is because it's me. Because when you click on this, there's no anchor, there's no href, there's no Google, when they're calling it as a robot, they can't actually see this link. This link exists because it is an input. And when that input is hit, like a form submission, it then triggers something in JavaScript, and then you can have all that fancy React virtual DOM stuff. And the reason why it's done that is, A, it's actually better. Like you don't want to have hyperlinks for this particular use case. You want the page to be quickly filterable and, you know, use React for what React's intended for, you know, JSX home and all that. But essentially, instead of using a hyperlink for this particular function, you can use something like a data href, which is similar to a href, except it's an attribute that's in an anchor tag instead, so Google can't call it. Or you can use a form input like what we do in JB Hi-Fi. And basically, you have all the cool stuff that devs like, without the SEO hell of having infinite versions of this URL callable. This is really the difficult manage because you can imagine any one of these parameters can change in all sorts of different crazy ways. And it multiplies upon itself and becomes what is called a crawl drag. So that my recommendation is if you have something that functions like this with parameters and things that are outside of your control, try to exclude them with HTML. Don't try to block them from robots.txt because that could backfire on you. But basically, let the canonical do its job. But if it's out of the core functionality of the website, then it's no longer an issue of the primary crawl of the page, and Google won't mistake it as an important page. Like if some person like linked to it on a blog or whatever with a filtered version, then canonicals can do their job. That's the point. So yeah, try doing it this way. Well, yeah, it goes without saying, always have to self-referencing canonical. Unless that self-referencing canonical, I've seen this, is for every URL possible, which means that when you have a query string, it actually says canonical query string, which is, that's not the point of the canonical. Cool. All right. Yeah. So the next advice I have with you is to try sibling navigation for deep nested PLPs. Now, most SEOs and most people who work in SEO are very familiar with silo structured and parent-child pages. So you have a parent category, that might be TVs. Then you have the child TVs, that might be OLED TVs, LED TVs, LCD TVs, whatever the new ones, or TVs by size, etc., etc. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper to get to that. But when you get to the deepest level, you can actually do something interesting where you can have what is called sibling hyperlinks. So here's an example of the 65-inch TVs, the 55-inch TVs, and here's this example of it in the search ranking number 1 for the 65-inch TVs. We have the exact same browse menu here for it. And the reason why we did that is because if all of these pages link to each other, and they're all specifically about size of TVs, they all are deeply interlinked to each other. It's actually a spoke when you look at it in Screaming Frog and those kind of things. This communicates a super strong signal, and basically every single one of these sizes, we can't be beat by any competitor because if one ranks, they should all rank except for that one bug with Google Canonicals a while back. But when they bought the 22-inch TV, it was all of them. But basically, this is really, really important to communicate signals. So when you get down, you're no longer stuck in the parent-child relationship. You actually get deep enough. You can actually do really interesting interlinking with the sibling pages that are very similar to each other. And from a user experience standpoint, they actually really enjoy it. Like, I'm on the 55-inch TVs. Oh, you know what? I'm very simple to swap to 65-inch. Let's spend some more money, like that kind of thing. So it really, really helps to do it. So the kind of the pattern we had was, if there's a clear parent-child relationship, use that. It's a gold standard. You know, this is the laptops category. Here's the more specific type of laptops. Do that when possible. When you're at the end of your row, then you use the sibling hierarchy if it makes sense. Like, of course, you're not going to do it when it doesn't make sense. They're not actually related. The links should be to their related links. And try to do that to like adjacent subcategories. And also depth, like try to not go too deep with parent and child things. That's one of the things I don't like about like those long tail UX solutions where people do like 27-inch monitor, that kind of thing. You're kind of like defeating the point of a good architecture and good structure. So, food. Set around. Security. Yeah, so basically trying to keep things sensible. Like there's a reason why we do everything manually with JB Hi-Fi because we don't need to resort to that. Like, you know, I see websites like mine and all that resorting to these types of techniques. And like, it's fine, but I can see, bro, you've got two different Flare Jeans pages. You have one where you have the text box A, text box B content, and you have the other one that you just generated in long-tail UX, despite you already having a page like that, like not using a noggin there. So you just, congratulations, you cannibalize yourself. Awesome. So, yeah. Humbug. Anyway, that's my opinion there. So now we're going to go into the schema stuff, and the one after this one's actually very complicated, but this is my time to talk, so you're all stuck here. So when it comes to schema, one of the most important one is probably breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs is like the most useful one. It's the easiest one to implement, and it provides so much value that it's just a no-brainer to implement. I strongly recommend JSON LD. One, there's a bug in microdata that's never been fixed. That causes it. Fortunately, you can't visually see the bug anymore in Google because Google doesn't actually show the breadcrumbs visually. Like this is the best you can do with breadcrumbs these days. This is a breadcrumb, but it's like one. Back when it used to be green and pretty, like you actually saw like the breadcrumbs and you can also do some cool stuff. Google is getting shorter and shorter. That those three little dots are just coming after us, like slowly and slowly, just eating away that URL length. So I strongly recommend JSON LD. JSON LD stands for JavaScript Object Notation List Link Data. So link data just means the format of the schema, and JSON is a JavaScript thing. Don't worry about it. Google didn't invent that. But basically, you want it to be strong. It can be very affected by filters, but just keep the structure consistent. And you should apply it to your PDPs and your PLPs. If you ever notice, JB Hi-Fi actually has a mismatch between breadcrumbs because they're two different logics, and that's never been solved when I was there. And since I've gone now, it's probably never been solved. But like basically, there's a mismatch there. That ideally should match. But what are you going to do? But the clear structured hierarchy means basically the pages at the very end, the product description pages, the PDPs, the ones that you buy it, can reinforce their parent categories strongly. So if you're on a very specific model of a laptop, with the breadcrumbs say laptops, HP laptops, HP Omen, for example, if it could, I don't think they do JB Hi-Fi, it reinforces each of the parents. If you have 55,000 products on JB Hi-Fi, each of those 55,000 products that have valid breadcrumbs are contributing to their parent categories and helping them rank, and conversely, otherwise. All right, so this is if your schema got to do this kind of stuff. So the upper catalog schema. So if you go to JB Hi-Fi or Spotlight or Camera View, you can see me doing this schema. JB Hi-Fi is the one is where I did it with JSON LD. And basically, I strongly recommend it for JSON LD. And this is a very, very complicated code I'll show you next, because you can use the ID property up here to join different, basically, JavaScript little scripts tags together. And you can basically join them together. You have to design it in very specific ways to make sure you don't contradict the logic. This explicitly defines the scope and number of products on the page. That's very useful number of items, 47. Basically, I'm communicating directly to Google that this is a page, there's a list of things, the things of products, there's 47. Very, very, very important information to communicate. And you also provide structured data for each product rendered on the page. So that means on the page, you say, this is a product, here's the pricing information, the reviews, etc., etc. But here's the main version of the URL. You can get that information on this page, but basically each little piece of information the product contributes to the product category page itself, product listing page. Oh, if I was ecom people, that boo, mixing up the terminology. But they all contribute to the products themselves, but also can help out that product there. So it's a reciprocal little information, a little bit of optimization. A lot of people just like slap on the product schema by itself without providing the context for it. This provides the context for it. And how do you do this? Well, you got to get your coding shoes on. So you won't be able to tell this unless you actually got the DOM itself and put it in the validator tool. Because if you just use the validator tool, it doesn't render JavaScript the way Google can render it. Google sees it's done perfectly. So we have off the catalog here, off the catalog here. This is once on the page. This is basically the main version of the upper catalog schema. It has the core things like the name, the URL, which is the gaming laptop page, and the number of items. That's about it. So this is all you have to do, but the important thing is this ID property, because that means we can make this thing massive if we include that. So that's what's happened above. On the right, I don't know how many people are familiar with React, but basically React is a JavaScript language designed by Facebook, and similar to React, Vue, and Svelte like what we use here, they have things called components. And the little card that you see in the product listing pages, that's called a component, it's a product card, and they can use, it's basically a reusable bunch of code that you're using a template. So what I work with JB Hi-Fi developers is to design a schema to render each one of these components on the product listing pages. So essentially, every single product card on the page renders this JavaScript output in the script tag. Now what this does is that this has product schema there as defined, but you can see it has little square brackets here, little curly brackets here. Basically what this is communicating is that this isn't a product, this is a list of products. We have one product, an array of one item, and here's the product. We have this ID, so it joins there, so they're actually the same item. When you do this every single time, essentially what happens is that array just gets popped on, it's a push, it's a pop-in array. So when it sees the second product, the exact same structure, but different information is here, it just adds a second item to the array. So what you've done is created a dynamic and versatile, scalable product collection page. So if you hit the load more button on JB Hi-Fi, again and again and again until you max out the collection, then open up the DOM and paste it, and there was 95 items there, you all of a sudden have 95 product schemas perfectly matched to that one thing there. This is all possible with the structure here, by joining this part, all this does is that the upper catalog here just says, hey, it's the same thing, so you just add it here. What it does is it grabs the item element listed, adds an array, and then each item in the array gets populated, and basically because you've done an array of one, it just adds it as an item in the array. This is how you can create scalable things with components using JSON-LD. This is why I recommend JSON-LD, because of that feature of the IB joining it. It's very, very difficult to work with mixed schema. So one of the issues we had with JB Hi-Fi is our FAQ schema was the HTML version, as opposed to the actual JavaScript version that we're doing here. So we couldn't actually reuse the FAQ schema with the same code, because, or we could if we rewrote all the FAQ schema in the new format. So yeah, fun. So does anyone have any questions about this? Nick?
I was just going to say, so the ID connects two of them, and that's a separate script tag that's associated with components associated with the product.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you put this, like you put multiple script tags here, so you can have 100,000 of these and one of these, it will still show up as off the catalog in validator.schema.org. So you just see one there, you expand it open, and it has all the items listed there. The products are just a item list element. They just happen to be a list of items that happen to be a product. And they just happen to be in an array. This is really important. The square brackets is key, because if you just did that, it'll just create a super monster product if you didn't have the array there. Because the way the joining works is that it basically says, this is the same code, we're just getting different parts of the same JSON with the same JSON object. So, but what's happening here, because this is an array, now we can add as many products as we want, and it's very clear that they're different array items. You can actually join them as well. Like if this has an ID as that, if we had a different ID on the page, for example, let's just say the reviews was handled separately, and we had another item there that had the reviews there, but had this item here, then you can actually consolidate that product as well. So IDs are actually quite flexible in that manner. You can also have stuff like the brand or the, like say for example, you had organization schema site-wide, and that organization schema had an ID. Well, if we wanted to add something like, let's pretend the brand was JB Hi-Fi, for example. We just put an ID, JB Hi-Fi ID, whatever it's called, and we'll just add all the company information and the address and all that stuff from the schema that already exists on the page, and just inserts in this item as well. Cool. Any other more questions? All right.
Data, so you've got all the identity stuff. This is obviously schema. So what ranking influences do you think this has? Or is this more of a like a click-through rate ranking influence?
So I think it gives a clear idea of like, this is a list of products that belong on the page. So like one of the issues, especially with JavaScript rendering, you know, Harry, like, because the website is in React, the list of products don't get rendered on the fly. Like they'll get rendered there. And Google's actually pretty good at stable PLP that rendering it after, let's say 2 weeks for JV, maybe a couple of days. Like some pages are quick, some pages are slow. The main benefit of this is that it clarifies what is on the page, what's important on the page, and these products belong to the category, because especially with dynamic rendering and client-side rendering, all that kind of stuff, there's a good chance that when you do advanced search operators and look to see if they know that the iPhone 13 128 gigabytes in midnight blue is on the page, it's not on the page. I have something called a canary test where I use search operators. I run it with my SEO tools for Excel to see if certain words on the JavaScript version of the page is actually in the index. You know, you just do in text or you just do quotation marks even, it's fine. And if it doesn't show up in bold or there's no results, that means that's not being used there. This helps clarify because once you fetch and render, it actually understands the page. Now, there's also that other thing, like, I don't know if you guys see this, like those listed images on the PLP page where this might help with that, but there's no clear sign for that. Unfortunately, a lot of signs are like hypothetical, but this was really, really good because I really was happy with the results. It had the strongest impact on the product pages themselves, the PDP pages. So we saw their performance improve from organics. When we implemented the change, it was very clear that there was a clear improvement in the PDPs themselves in the actual listings there. So like that was my main benefit from the pages, but then again, this was on JB Hi-Fi. So like if you implement on a smaller website that isn't a monster like JB, it might have a different effect. It might help out with the actual main page. Because it's really difficult to use the example of the monster as like his best practice because they have a domain authority or a domain rating of like, you know, an insane monster or like their entity scores. Like I don't have to build links with JB Hi-Fi. Like no, it's fine. Like, you know, that kind of thing. Like its main benefit was to solve the issues with React and making sure that products were clearly understood by Google to belong in their collections, because we saw the best performing products were the products that were in the earliest part of the PLP, like the first 3 items, or the featured items that they were like specifically like pre-order or what have you. That's the kind of thing that we saw. We were hoping to get more equality with everything that was on page 1, and also with the changes with the way we did pagination. When you hit load more, it actually Google can actually see 96 items, for example, or how 72. God, I don't have to but like when you double 36, basically. So Google actually sees, oh no, when you go to Search Console and you fetch the page 2 version URL, you can actually see the crawl data, look at the DOM, you copy and paste it in like my code editor, and say, okay, validate that schema. Oh, there's 96 items working as intended. So Google actually sees the DOM as intended. It doesn't get confused with page 2, page 3, page 4. It understands like this is a fuller list of content. It understands the pagination process. It understands the content on the page, what happens when pagination happens, what's actually loaded on the page. So that's the kind of, it's really hard to give direct benefits. I'm sure you know this, like to directly correlate any SEO task with a particular thing, especially schema. Schema is the worst because like other than the rich results where you have presentation, like say, oh, we've got a little FAQ thing, or we have the reviews snippets there. The benefits of schema is really on aggregate for the most part, unless you're trying to solve a very specific problem. I hope that's not waffling too much, like, you know. Yeah. All right, cool.
Sorry.
I don't know what.
But like when we're talking about PLP pages, these are.
Sorry.
We are live. When we're talking like PLP pages and PDP pages, like typically these are the major drivers for revenue, the drivers of like organic traffic and things like that to websites in e-commerce. So that's why this is really great to be able to go in and deep dive on this stuff. Just going back to what Harry's question, also like with item list, having that in the schema and having that on the page as well, that will also be another feature to be able to add it to the SERP. And again, if you're thinking like, okay, if I'm going to look at like my David Jones and maybe like some other website for just products, I might choose maybe the one with a larger range. I might choose the one with the best aggregate review. I might choose the one that maybe have a little bit more contextual information with like an FAQ accordion on it as well. Like that is a benefit of having schema on category pages. My question to you is, okay, you've got like offer catalog schema. There's also a collection page schema, which is maybe like through Creative Works. Yep. And then there is item list. So maybe break down a little bit when to use them, why to use them, and what's the benefits.
Sure. So I did a schema presentation, like, what was that, Nick? When I was like forever ago, I actually explained this kind of stuff. So the way it's structured is that this is an offer catalog, and offer catalog is a list of items. Basically, it's like a enumeration list. The item list element is like the actual list item. Think of this as the URL, and this is the LI, or like for your HTML people, basically. So that's the individual list element. There's actually something that was above it, and there's a reason why I don't have it is because I implemented and I broke something. So there was something above it called collection page. So for those of you who don't know, in Schema there are 10. There's a web page item, and every single page is assumed to be a web page by default. And there are 10 more specific versions of web page. Probably the one that you're almost familiar with is FAQ page. FAQ page is the one that you guys use there. So one of the things that is not actually evident and clear is unless you use JSON LD to combine them and use that, you can't actually have multiple pages at the same time. So if you have an FAQ page and a collection page on the same page, one can trump the other. So when I implemented this in the original pure form, where it was a collection page with an off catalog and a list and all that kind of stuff, a better version of that, a more explicit version, it actually got rid of all that FAQs. So all the snippets were gone. I'm like, oh, why didn't it do that? I'm like, there's no schema errors, that kind of stuff. Then I remembered my presentation and all the research I did. I'm like, oh, there can only be one page. So FAQ page, and the easy solution for that is to join the FAQ page with it, because you can actually have collection page / offer catalog / FAQ page. Our original thing was actually combining offer catalog with the collection page type. We can't do that because we did it in different formats. So FAQ page is done in microdata, which is just a formatted version of HTML. You guys would have seen an item scope, item prop, item type, etc., where you format the HTML to provide schema. JSON-LD is the more modern version. It's providing the data in a serialized form in JSON, JavaScript object notation. And this is more clear for like robots to understand. And you can actually convert JSON to like CSV and all that kind of stuff. If you know how it's structured, it's actually pretty easy to read, but unless you're a coder, like it might be scary to go, oh my God, like, is this important? Why is there no comma there? Like that kind of stuff. Like, why is it not working? Like if you're not a coder, you won't understand why it doesn't work. So those are the kind of things. So you can break stuff if you try that. So like that's an example of me breaking it. Remembering my like digging my brain, like why didn't that work? Oh, that's okay. So I just got rid of collection pages, did it with offer catalog. Offer catalog by itself isn't a page, it's just a schema of it's an object, it's an item itself. So that's actually completely fine. You have a million of them on the page as one, and it won't conflict with anything. So hopefully that helps with in general. As you can use offer catalog, it's just a very specific type of list. You can just use its parent element instead of offer catalog. Offer catalog is very specifically a catalog of offers. But if you just had a list, I can't remember what the list is. You're asking me about like hopping onto Google and typing in schema.org to look up the documentation. But the pairing of item list element, like you could just do a list for all sorts of things. It could be like a list of reviews, a list of sports scores, a list of this and that to communicate that kind of stuff. Job ads, for example, like a list of jobs. So those are the kind of things that you can do. And it just provides a good sense of like, this is a page about other objects which have their own pages. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Well, someone just applauded. All right. Next item. Oh, cool. We're on to PDBs now. So PDBs are very specific, best targets for very specific search terms. They're the primary target for transactional intent, and they're the biggest risk of duplicates and keyword cannibalization because they can be so similar to one another. Their content can be so similar, their images can be so similar, their names can be very, very similar, where like their page sizes are very indistinguishable between like the 128 gigabytes in red and the green, all that kind of thing. So what are the ways you can handle this? So same thing as the other one, hierarchy. You can include a self-linking breadcrumb to canonical or not. It's completely up to you. So like you could just have this as iPhone or iPhone 13 and stop there, or have it there, you have it unlinked. I do recommend, I've had this discussion with other SEOs before, but I do recommend having at least one hyperlink to itself on the page. And this is just for PDB, this is just in general, because it helps out the canonical URL, because if there is a self-link to itself on the page and Google crawls it and sees that that's the page, it actually helps with the consolidation errors. Like I've noticed that you get less like, reinterpretations of canonicals where there's a self-referencing link, but it might be annoying for the user, so I guess use your judgment. It's not like the end of the world, but you totally have it, it's fine. Like it might be weird, it might not be. Have featured images. You saw a lot of screenshots of search results before. One thing you would have noticed is there's images next to every single thing. There was an iPhone 13 and an image there. That images are important. You have to make sure that you have a featured image of the product. If you don't have a featured image, it's not that important. Having your title, SKU, anything that's like factual is really, really important. So like it's important to have a unique title than a short title. So for example, like when we optimize for page title and meta descriptions, you typically don't want to have a page title that's too long, right? This doesn't apply to PDPs because product names can be really, really long. Like you probably would have seen like screws or like this and that, stupidly long names. It's more important for them to be unique than it is for them to be that, because their main, like if they're that long, sometimes they have no search value, so you don't even care to do the page title and the description with that level of detail, or the value in search is in the specifics of it. So you want to be as specific as possible. So next item to optimize on PDPs. So the core components, try indexable URLs for SKUs and interlinking. So I've been a convert from this, probably I've thought about it for a while, but working with JB Hi-Fi has really made me see the light of this. A lot of people have like what is called a master product, and they might have variants, query strings, those kind of things, and they'll consolidate those URLs into the one. After working on JB Hi-Fi, I vehemently disagree with that. I actually think every single SKU should be an indexable URL and have Google figure it out. And the reason why is because the type of traffic that they attract with their specific versions of that is the SEO value. And anything that was broad intent, you can actually rank a PLP for that. You can rank the PDP as well. Google will just pick one. That's just how it works. And you can target broad that goes, you just trust Google to link to you. And one very important tip, the two most important additional filters you can add to a Google search. One of them is num equals, which is the number of results. So num equals 9 will get rid of feature snippets. Num equals 100 gets you 100 results. This most important one is actually filter equals 0. These are the real results. So if you type in Apple 13, Apple iPhone 13, 128 gigabyte, and do filter equals 0, what you'll see is Apple, 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 JB, JB, Apple, 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 JB, JB, Apple, Apple, something else, Office Works maybe, Apple, and JB Hi-Fi. So the 100, we have 5 different versions of the 128 gigabyte phone. In the real rankings where there's no filter or consolidation for domains applied, Apple by right should rank for all of them. But when you remove Apple, JB's next. We have 4 of the top 5 non-Apple results. And that means that I could mute one of these products. Don't even redirect. I could redirect it to a monkey or whatever, like a random thing, like a YouTube video. The next page will rank for it because it's the second best page for it and the third best page. One funny story is during the pandemic, we were out of Nintendo Switches. So everyone wanted stuff. We were out of Nintendo Switches at JB Hi-Fi. We were ranking really well for Nintendo Switch to the what is it, the neon blue or whatever version, which was out of stock and was going to be out of stock for a long time. I could not outrank this page. So I did a technique. There's a technique I've learned for a long time ago. I learned it like 2013, 2014 called Phoenixing the URL. Essentially what we did is like, okay, we have the Nintendo Switch, neon blue, whatever, 512 gigabytes. Let's swap around the color and the name of the URL. So now we're renaming the URL instead of like blue 512, it's 512 blue, whatever way it was. We're not going to redirect that to that page. We're not going to fix that redirect. Instead, we're going to redirect that to the PLP. So because the neon blue one will always rank for the neon blue one, people can figure it out. But because that neon blue one was ranking for Nintendo Switch, the money term, when it redirected to the PLP, guess what ranked? The PLP. So that was a technique called Phoenixing a URL where you could just take an existing ranking and move it forward. People use it for black hat techniques where they would have like a separate resources section, and then they'll build links to them, then they'll move it elsewhere, and they'll redirect it to a money page. That's the version of it. But I use it for a practical applied purpose for a real client. So that's essentially what that was used for. So yeah, like essentially other pages are good candidates to rank. You might cannibalize yourself, but you might actually have 3 or 4 pages ready to go to rank. It's fine. Next, consider bullet point content. So on JB Hi-Fi, the top, like in all e-commerce, really consider just having stuff that's just for sales purposes, to get engagement. You don't want to put like an essay before you add your cart button. That will be antithesis to what you actually want to do. You want to actually just say, here's the main benefits, here's the reviews, here's that kind of stuff. It's for the user, it's for that kind of thing. It's very clear what the subject of the page is about. This is really, really good for product pages. All right, controversial takes coming soon. All right, so we've got the controversial have a price. Have very, very clear pricing, have it available. For the main content of your page, if you're an individual brand, say you're a mattress company, you're like competing with the likes of like Koala and all that kind of stuff, you have your own brand, write super descriptive, personalized, basically treat your product description pages like a landing page. You're making a sell here, you're writing full content, tell a story, all that kind of stuff. You're a retailer, the manufacturer's description, which is duplicate content, is vitally important. I have not seen many pages that did not have a manufacturer's description, which is duplicate, rank for terms. I've seen people who got rid of the manufacturer's description, rewrote it with unique SEO content, and lost. Because that piece of content is being used, it's like, I think, what's his name? Dayon, what's his surname again? I keep forgetting the guy from Brisbane. Petrovich. Dan Petrovich. Basically, it's like that linked version thing. You want to rank for the manufacturer's description content. So if you take a manufacturer's description content for a particular PDP, you take the first sentence of it, you Google it. If your website's ranking, that means you haven't been hit by a duplicate content penalty. That's not how duplicate content penalty works. They're very, very different. But like basically, your content on that manufacturer's description is actually being used to rank your page. You might get hit with a duplicate content penalty. You might not. It's actually up to luck and other factors that you can manipulate. But really, like, it's actually fine to use a manufacturer's description. It's actually really important. If you want to add content, you have content similar to the bullet points or other content where you enhance the manufacturer's description. So don't get, just because something's been used before, don't get rid of it because it might actually be an important signal, because that content is used on every major retailer website. That's just basically a signal to Google that says, hey, this is an official product of blah, 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 SKU number, line item, this and that, GTIN, blah. Like, you need that item to have that content there. It's actually really important. I actually really doubt that you can rank competitively when you get rid of a manufacturer's description. Not unless the content you wrote was really, really good, but and it was similar to what the manufacturer's description was. And of course, just have reviews and products you may also like. What's the time? I just don't know what it is. 8 o'clock. Okay. Quick learning. We have 2 more sections, please. So, and of course, scheme of products. So product scheme is really, really important. It's less complicated than the crazy one I showed you earlier. This is actually a little bit more standard because it's been done before, it's provable, etc. There are a bunch of components there. It's way easier to work with individual SKUs. There is a schema called product group, which is in the working thing, as Nick's asked me about it before. I said we could use it, but technically it's not official. It just validates back to the product. But like, it works with variants as well. So if you have like a blue version of this one and that one, like, you might want to use the individual one. Just be careful. Try to just keep one product schema on a product page at a time. The reason why is that it can get mixed up with Google Shopping, merchant center feeds, the wrong price being used. So something that happened a long time ago was there was a drone on JB Hi-Fi's website. This is the JB Hi-Fi presentation. There's a drone on JB Hi-Fi's website. It's about retail $600. And they had a, you may also like, and it was like an accessory that was like for $99. I can't remember what the accessory was. Google, out of 50,000 pages, decided these 2 drone pages, your price isn't the product one, it's this random PLP that happened to be there that you may also like. So people were like, oh my God, a drone for $99, click. Whoa, hold on a second. This is $600. Like, I saw $99. So we had that thing. It's like, yo, what's going on? Like, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was fun. But basically, that's why I strongly recommend having one PDP, because even though Google understands schema and all that kind of information very, very clearly most of the time, like, there's a 1 in 50,000 chance it will get something horribly wrong. So like, that's the kind of stuff that will happen. And also, you can optimize properties as much as possible. It helps contribute to the shopping graph, which I'll talk about later, and also provides rich results in the SERP. So this is the PDP result. So you have obviously like page title description, but like, you have your schema ratings there, which is somewhere there. You have the number of reviews, 553, so it maps out. The price kind of maps out, and then it's in stock. The most important ones are pricing, availability, and if you can do reviews, but these are the important ones. This is a really nice to have as well. And this isn't schema. This is Google being smart and like looking at a table on the specifications, saying, "Oh, internal memory is this, and display type is that." And like, makes me look like a genius. Did not do a single thing here. Like, it just looks cool, occupies the SERPs, helps out. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? There's nothing like the rush of ranking really well and occupying all the space. It's just like, yeah, I've got that. Cool. This is just the one slide landing page. There's this best for information content, great for long form content, and different spectrum of competition. You're competing with publishers, you're competing with review websites, affiliates, those kind of things. And I strongly recommend just use the videos, images, products, etc. This is, I think, the PS5 page. Like, just go all out. Like, this is an e-commerce talk, so like the same SEO principles that apply for any landing page apply here. Just keep it there. Like, a lot of people say optimize a blog or whatever. Just have a page that's like structurally there. That could be in the menu, could be interlinked in your category pages or whatever, like a buyer's guide of some kind, and it's just be there to rank. So I'm not going to talk much about this because it's the same as other SEO, which is not e-commerce. So sales events and new launches. So how to plan and execute strategy to rank at the peak of search value. So one of the tasks that I was tasked with JB Hi-Fi is that they always did really, really poorly whenever a new product launched. So if there's a new version of Samsung or Apple or etc., they would eventually rank, but like 6 or 8 weeks later, and the peak time to rank, which was the launch day, they just never did it. So we came up with a plan and had some very repeatable processes, and we had a lot of success doing it. So here's what we do. So first of all, let's talk about how search intent shifts over time. So we look at iPhone 13, just like, there's some transactional terms here, there's JB, there's some like informational intent here, some Mac rumors there, and like another transactional one, Vodafone's listing. So this is the typical normal search result after I got rid of all the crap. A little bit of editing here just to make it look like normal search. This is iPhone 14. iPhone 14 looks like this. Why? Because there's no iPhone 14. So when you have no iPhone 14, the type of websites that rank for iPhone 14 are like, whoa, here's the new crazy thing about iPhone 14 that you won't believe. And like, look at this FAQ schema, like iPhone, here's the rumors and the release date, etc., etc. So that's called informational intent. Like right now, the job of someone searching iPhone 14, they want these kind of results because they're just crazy people who don't want their new phone and they need it now. Like basically, Google is doing the job to satisfy that search intent. So essentially, when you're preparing for a launch, you're going through the transition of this to this, basically. So when you have a launch, one of the things that we always tell people is to link from your already established pages. This is one of the most important things that we did. The mobile phones page on JB Hi-Fi is literally one of the most powerful pages in all of Australia. So when we have a new iPhone 13, guess what? We have that content ready to go and updated on the iPhone page. It's there. People links to it. It tells us what the iPhone 13 is. Boom. Then we have the iPhones page. That page has been around for a long, long time. Guess what? We update that as well. It's like, bang, we need to link to all the different versions of the iPhone 13. We still mention iPhone 12 because it's not dead yet, but like it's there. And guess what? When we launch and have all these interlinking, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this really trustworthy page about mobile phones, and this really trustworthy page about iPhones. All of a sudden they're talking about this iPhone 13. Google's like, whoa, what is this? This is cool. Like it's like Google's checking it out. So basically, you have that content ready to go. You have it all planned. So you're not just like getting your meta descriptions, your page titles ready to go for just the iPhone 13 page. You're actually doing a holistic look at the way the website's structured and how each page as an asset has utility to help out this new page. They're all like, you're built on the shoulders of your fathers or your forefathers, basically. That's kind of how it goes. So you also have that content ready to go. So when we have the iPhone page, guess what? We update these links. They point to all of these ones. And these pages are all ready to go with the new, like the title, like the little text box A. There's not enough resources for us to do the text box B because we don't even know what's in the iPhone 13 yet. That's the crazy part. It's like when it launches, we're like, what? Oh, like there it is. So we are like, yeah, iPhone 13 is a thing, and we know it's a Pro and a Max and that kind of stuff, but we actually literally don't know until it launches because there's embargoes and we actually don't know. So you just have to have it ready to go. You know what you can and can't say, and what you can and can't do, and basically you're just ready to go on launch day. And yeah, that's basically all. That's basically all that's to it. That's actually really because essentially all we had to do was use resources that were available to us to actually do it. So instead of taking 6 weeks to something launch, day one we were top of SERPs. So that's basically how it goes. So we're going to talk about the future of SEO. It's very, very speculative and all this kind of stuff, but it's a lot about feed optimization, pricing, availability, all these other e-commerce factors that will be more powerful factors in the future. So first of all, let's talk about the shopping graph. Show of hands of who knows what the shopping graph is. Harry, Nick. Cool. So last year during Google I/O, Google announced the shopping graph, which is kind of like their knowledge graph, but for e-commerce. It's like their own e-commerce spin. So there's a bunch of new features that they'll add. They'll have like these specific Chrome specific stuff where you can like save your checkout, you can do all this kind of stuff with special offers, e-commerce related things when it comes to like pricing, reviews, price drop, etc. What basically it means is that Google has a database of products, their pricing, the retailers who sell those products, and it's all mainly driven by merchant center feeds and product schema. So you guys know what surface across Google is, correct? Show of hands, just quickly see. A few people just tired. Yeah, so I was gonna say last year, but I think the year before last year, whatever it was, Google made Merchant Center free for organic listings. Essentially, you get free traffic for having a feed on your website because this is something primarily for shopping feeds, which is primarily for product listing ads, which is paid search. The reason why is that it's kind of a data play by Google to get everyone to willingly give their e-commerce data to some kind of crazy database. So essentially, that means that even if you don't do paid search advertising, you're not that kind of business, you're mom and pop. I don't even know what this crazy Google ads thing, like who are you calling me and what I've decided to do this thing and logging through these accounts. No, you actually can have these feeds and have it organically appear. And this is so that Google can have the most complete set of data to build out and compare things and have all these possible features in the future. They have some really, really big ideas for Google Maps and Google Lens, all these local listings and those kind of things. And it's going to become really important down the line. So let's talk about like a first slide of it. Like Brody Clark, I should have done this to his article here, but I just took a screenshot from his article. But basically, one of the first signs that the knowledge graph and like what's happening in paid search is kind of bleeding to organic was the first organic listing of seller ratings appearing. Now, seller ratings is what is used in Google Ads. When you have seller ratings, they're collected by the Google mechanism. There's a little Google Merchant Center like thing that you can pop out in the checkout. You can collect people's information. They'll send an email to do it. There's also trusted partners like Trustpilot, and there's a whole list of them that aggregate all the ratings and give you a score rating. So this is Kiana and JB Hi-Fi. Like, so you can see the difference between small business and big business, basically the type of ratings that you'll get. So like, I look at star rating Kiana. So like, yeah. But basically, like you can have like you can collect ratings aggregated, and it can be available. I haven't actually seen this in practice that much, but if Google is actually using it and applying it in organic search, it actually shows that what's happening in paid search and organic search is kind of blending together. The data sources are being shared, they're being more collated together. Another thing is the product knowledge pattern. I actually think I'm missing a slide because it was a really interesting one I didn't include, but I'll talk about that in this slide as well. So the product knowledge pattern, you guys saw that in the previous slide. Essentially, there's a lot of rich information here, pricing data, those kinds of things. I was talking to the people at Nozzle last year, around about November, and they told me there was something like 84 different items in a SERP page that was related to e-commerce, and they were planning on how to track it, but they were only visible or active, or they were just hiding there because they were rank tracking software. They look for all these different attributes of what to actually grab and information that's available in the SERPs themselves. So there's all these pieces of e-commerce data that's available, like sizing and storage capacity, like conditions, that kind of stuff. One of the things I noticed was that availability and pricing are the critical rank factors for this little panel here for the product gap. Right. So we see one good established product, the iPhone 13. JB Hi-Fi was fine, established. It's pricing differential, right? JB Hi-Fi is 128 gigabyte one is actually the cheapest option. That's actually one of the contributing factors of why it's the highest rated there. Who knows who are these websites? Show of hands if you know who they are in the PS5 listing. Like, can you buy a PS5 from those websites? Can you buy a PS5 anywhere? So the reason why they're showing up is that on their website, it appears that you could buy a PS5 from their website. So that's the reason why there's no JD Hi-Fi, there's no Big W, like there's no like whoever like EB Games or whoever else you can buy a PS5 from. The reason why these websites are kind of showing it is because they kind of seem like you can buy it from there because you can't buy it anywhere else because you can't buy a PS5. So this is kind of like there's got nothing much to do with like rankings or like authority, those kind of things. Like there might be some baseline level authorities so that no random results. There's like a crazy like scary looking like eBay listing there and all this kind of stuff there. Like pricing information, like what people are desperate. Like people are desperate to buy a PS5, they might check this one out and they might discover like what it's about. So that's kind of like how it's tied there. And essentially having merchant center big items all that established becomes ways optimized. I think I don't have a slide on it because I can kind of tell that I didn't do a slide on it. One of the items that also showed evidence that Google shopping data is being used is what's called local inventory ads being added to Google search. So I think hopefully it still works. Hopefully if you Google on your phone, iPhone 13, when you go to JB Hi-Fi, you'll actually see a little carousel of map items. It'll show you the nearest JB Hi-Fi and those ones. And it says in stock. I didn't do that on purpose to have map listings organically. It's because we have Google Shopping, we have local inventory ads set up, that we have local map packs for that particular item, for that particular thing. Like we tell them, hey, we have an iPhone 13 in the Berg Street JB Hi-Fi, something like that. That's something that the JB Hi-Fi team does because they want to sell. They want people to first do it for paid search. But we got a bonus for having it in organic because the item that's available for paid search and their what the rich advertising they do is slowly becoming integrated in the organic search experience. And like you have to basically follow Barry, like every single tweet he does or like every news item that he has, if there's anything out there, like when the next item is like what comes out of America. But it's basically coming down to Google Merchant Center bid optimization. So who here has done optimization for shopping feed before? No. So shopping feed optimization, this is like the important specification for you to do that. So just remember what that is, but just Google it, you'll find it. It's a specification for it. Paid search people are actually kind of lazy, unless you're a feed specialist. They actually don't like optimizing feeds. I love optimizing feeds, but it takes a long time to validate and all that kind of stuff, but I actually love it. There are, 65 or so attributes in Google Shopping that's available to you to communicate. 7 are required, and there's like 18 that's like required if you're in Japan and you have like two, like the son of a wolf and just two children and the full moon and this and that. Like, and there's like 26 optional attributes. These are things that go from like the pricing, the name, that to like the size or the type of size. Like, is it a apparel size or is it like a box size or that kind of thing? Units, different unit sizes, etc. And you can basically go full on, super optimal, super filled out, like putting the O back into SEO. The optimization strat for e-commerce can be done with Google Shopping. So like this, I'll just show you basically like these are the required fields. I can't fit 65 items in a slide. It just doesn't work. But basically, if you're going to optimize feeds, like feeds can be done in Google. You can even do it in Google Sheets. If you know the specification to do in Google Sheets, it'll be a nightmare to manage stock and all that kind of stuff. But if you familiarize yourself with feed optimization tools like Data Feed Watch, for example, which is one I'm familiar with, or like have feed partners, maybe find a partner agency that does feed specialization for paid search. But you say, hey, listen, I like how much you want to optimize all 65 items. Like, what's it gonna take, right? Like, do we need to improve our data input? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? That's basically the kind of stuff that you can do. And like, I think that the impact for this will be bigger and bigger going forward. Because like we already see evidence of like map listings going out. Like I see the results early on for JB Hi-Fi just because JB Hi-Fi has good paid search optimization already. And I see the gaps that other websites have poor paid search that's actually slowly impacting their organic search because their organic agencies, like this isn't on the radar for, it's not a required skill set for SEO, right? Like you're not going to do it. Like you don't care about stock availability and like this like sales messaging and all these kind of programs. No, but I think it's something that like SEOs need to start familiarizing themselves with. Understand like end to end, like how to add a feed emergence, how to modify it. Understand like how supplemental feeds work, so that way you can override it. Similar to how you might use Cloudflare to override a page title description. Hey, let's override like the sizes based on the ID of the item. So you can have a Google sheet, override this because you're a super optimal SEO because you live for the O, and that's basically what you do. So that's something you guys can do. But yeah, I think I've talked long enough. We're there, but
One last thing to add. This is so good, but this really only started to like evolve to the nth degree halfway through last year.
yeah, they announced it in April, but it wasn't visible in the search. It was just like because when you look at Google I/O, it's just like watching like they talk about this, they said this last year or whatever. But then like the seller ratings that Brody pointed out was the first time I was like, oh holy crap, they're actually doing stuff with this kind of stuff. And like when I first Googled iPhone 13 on my phone, I saw that there was a map tag. I thought it was like why is that paid search thing? I realized it was organic. I'm like, oh crap, like it's happening. Like they're actually taking something that we optimized for paid search and applied it to organic search. And like, someone like me could get the credit or whatever, but I immediately told the client like, hey, this is great. This is only because you guys are doing great paid search work. You guys are, have a really good feed optimization. You have an internal ownership of that. That's why you're succeeding there. So yeah, that's about it for the future. I actually just think that that's where future is going with that. Like Google have big ambitions with regards to Google Lens, Google Maps, and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of how it goes. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can just find me this username there, Macinkovic. But yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn's actually my most responsive thing, but like whatever. Like I actually didn't use Twitter that much, so like Nik Ranger just dragged me to the dead. Like, hey, I'll mention you a couple of names.
Kept tweeting at you.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Macinkovic people. All right, so we have some questions. Do we have any questions? We're going to answer that. Yeah, we got a question right here.
I guess my question is, I think during that whole presentation, it was fantastic, by the way. You spoke about JB Hi-Fi, and obviously they're a massive business with hundreds of thousands of pages. For those of us who might work with small e-commerce businesses, like with hundreds of pages, or that are only spending thousands of dollars on SEO, what would be your top 3 kind of suggestions, or like is what you said scalable downscalable in a sense?
Yeah, so for those of you guys who know me, before I worked on JB Hi-Fi, I worked at a small business for 4.5 years. That's kind of like how I got known as the Shopify SEO guy, is that I was a digital marketing manager for a small Shopify retailer. And because I had no budget, I think my SEO budget for 1 year was like $1,500. Like, I had sore eyes and just like over SEO, like, what? How do you even do SEO? Yeah. So like basically like no expenses, none of that kind of stuff. Basically just me doing like tech SEO for a website with no authority and trying to get wins that way with like basically identifying keyword gap and all that. It's hard for me to give advice because I'm a hands-on technical SEO, right? Because like my advice applies to me with my skill set. So my advice is the best wins you can get is page title links, right? Like that kind of thing. The second best win is with basically understanding how keyword cannibalization works and not duplicating pages. Like when we got started with our work on the iPhone category in June of 2020, it was June of 2020, I think, or 2021, one of the two. Like JB Hi-Fi wasn't ranking for iPhone, they were position 20. And the reason why they were position 20 is because they had 4 different versions of the iPhone page. And I think there were iPhone 11 at the time, or maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 versions of iPhone 11. So JB Hi-Fi with all their power were weak because they had too many pages about the same thing, right? And the reason why is because the bad side of having a big company like JB Hi-Fi is that you have people in marketing or people in separate departments who have access to the CMS and they can create like a page because they need to create an EDM. They can just put on a quick landing page, bang, done. But all of a sudden it's like in the sitemap, crawled by Google, those kind of things. So keeping a clear and to understand website for a robot, having the website rank well, and making sure that all the basics are valid, like all the pricing information is good, those kind of things. Because if you don't have budget, if you're a small business, the only way you can compete is like with overwhelming content or like really cool links, those kind of things. And that's where, or like if you had someone like me, like over optimizing technical SEO, like batshit insane Shopify like strats that basically like rank for Estee Lauder Afterpay because every single version of the category pages have an automatically generated Afterpay page and no one's optimizing that thing. Like those are the kind of strats when you have a small business, you kind of have to overachieve. It's kind of a good thing where you work for an agency, at a big agency, you're well resourced. You work for a small company, you get very skilled because the only way to succeed is to be skilled. So like, you know, I have no experience in managing big paid search budgets, but there's certain tasks that I was better than my paid search colleagues in my last job because I was very hands-on. Like I was the only one in the company who knew how to optimize feeds. Like they work with large budgets. I can't because I always had small budgets when I was doing paid search. But I was the only one in the company who like could optimize the hell out of feed. And like I wasn't like, oh shucks, feed isn't working. Well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, no, let's debug this, boom, boom, boom. That's how you do it. So like basically, if you have no budget, you're small. Your only thing is to like outwork and out hustle, unfortunately, which is very, very hard because if you don't have the skill set, like you know, that's basically like now you have to work harder at something that you don't even know that well or you're not particularly good at. So it's kind of like you're swimming upstream when you're taking your first lesson swimming, but like that actually helps you learn the hard way as well. Yeah, so that's bad. I can talk about that for hours and go on a huge Joe Rogan rant or something like that.
That was awesome. Do we have any other questions looking out there? Woo, we got one right here.
Not yet.
Yeah, so when it came to collection pages, how did you consider page rank and hyperlinking?
Well, basically, there we go. So there's a lot of ways to calculate this. So like you can run like a crawl in Screaming Frog and use various APIs to connect to like link research tools, page authority, like all of those ones that have like these aggregated metrics. Remember that these are third-party metrics. So like it's actually really, really good to have a solid understanding. Like I use link research tools just as like the baseline for like JB Hi to understand like, which pages were like the most powerful pages historically. And that's how like we kind of came to the conclusions like, oh wow, the mobile phone page has like maybe a decade or so of like high quality links. Like even like the old website and the old website, the old website, they all continuously like, you know, the mobile phone page, that's the page redirect that you don't mess up, right? Like so that would have all this. So but it's more about like it's not about us building links to it, right? The authority from our standpoint for a big website like that, it's not about us building links. It's more like, well, the mobile phones page is very valuable. It's now an asset. So how do we use that asset in utility to help out other pages? And that's why we had that technique with the text box feed. That didn't exist back in like June of 2020. We changed that, and that helped out every single page. The mobile phone page never linked to other phone categories. Then we linked to upload, linked to this and that. And it wasn't shocking that everything that we hyperlinked for started to rank. So essentially, when you have authority to a deep internal page, very powerful, you actually can turn that into a weapon to help you rank even deeper internal pages. So that's kind of how you make the decision. When you're using, like you should do it for every page if possible, but the mechanism for domain authority, all that kind of stuff, trust, all that kind of stuff, is more about prioritizing which page is most useful for now, what page is weak and needs help, and that's kind of where you can do that there. But you also can like have really weak metrics. Remember, I talked about launch strategy. Those are brand new pages which have all the metrics are said to have nothing, right? Because they don't exist. And it takes a while for those metrics to even update like for that. So like according to the third-party metrics, there'll be nothing, but that will be number one, day one on launch. So that's because we're using the assets that we have on hand to create utility where other websites either don't have the monster that is JB Hi-Fi behind them. Like that's actually a really, really big thing behind us because it's easy for me to take credit when it's a monster. Like it legitimately is a monster. We've talked about it. Like like if we were allowed to rank for hair dryers, we had a client called Hair House, a big retailer as well. We can't rank for hair products because that's our own client. We're not going to compete against our own client. But I think if we were allowed to, we probably could have crushed ourselves, even though we were crushing the ranks for Hair House, because JB Hi-Fi is a get a monster. So my advice is get a monster for a client.
Just a little thing, just on like with Screaming Frog, go into Screaming Frog, go.
They're still seeing my presentation mode.
I know. I'm just gonna tell them. I can't figure it out. Just go Screaming Frog, go to configuration, API access, and then you can be able to have like Google Analytics, Search Console, PageSpeed Insights. You will need like a little key for that. Majestic, Ahrefs, Moz. Majestic Ahrefs will do essentially what Peter's talking about.
Yeah, and if you guys also recommend, if you work a lot in Excel, I strongly recommend SEO tools for Excel because you can use APIs for everything.
If you got a PC.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I know it's Windows. I'm sorry. So
I've got that one over there.
Like literally, the reason why I use my laptop here at my work is like have 64 gigabytes of RAM is because I can open Excel and have like multiple, like I have like 700 columns, that's 700 rows. I'm able to do API calls and it doesn't crash on me.
Like mine does.
Yes. So that's
stressful
because like if you ever work with APIs, if you're not a developer, it's actually quite difficult, right? Because you have to understand how to fetch the API and like get that and apply it to some kind of thing. Like, okay, I can learn Python or I can learn JavaScript. I'm like, no, bro, I just need this in a spreadsheet now with like metrics and stuff.
Yeah.
So essentially what happened with SEO tools for Excel is like, okay, great. Link research tools, boom. I now know I get all my items, do a little formula, boom, there's the metrics. Moz, there's the metrics. Ahrefs. You can also use other APIs like data for SEO, which is like really powerful, and all these other ones. Google Search Console, oh my God, having access to 300,000 keywords just like that, boom, in Google Search Console when the stupid interface doesn't give you 1,000, well, that's no way to live. Like you have to basically be able to work with that kind of level of data. And doing in Excel is just a really natural way of thinking. If you're coded, then go ahead. Like if you're like JC who does like all this cool Python stuff, do that. But if you're like a pleb like the rest of us, stick to Excel and type on that keyword and just keep doing it until it crashes.
I'm disappointed in Peter.
You're disappointed.
Pandas and dark right.
Head is digital. I got faster computers at handling Excel. That's my solution. The $5,000 computer.
Yeah, that was my fault. I actually rang Peter one day, like, because I was using that piece of shit over there, and I maxed out my CPU, and I was crawling like a really big site, and just trying to do like a really, really simple crawl to do a redirect plan.
Yeah.
And I literally called you, and I was like, mate, this is not going to cut it. It's like, I'm just down the wire. Client told me last minute, I need this. Like, I'm gonna bleed for this motherfucker. Can you please help me? And you literally did the redirect plan.
I just did a fuzzy match. It was really
Yeah, just did the fuzzy match, and then we took it, and then we were able to use it.
like
afterwards.
I was like, all right, just give me like, how many minutes? It was like, I think I messed up once, and then it was like, all right, here you go, like bang.
Yeah, we had to run it twice, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sorry.
Again, this is
Be my friend. That's your solution.
this is romance that exists right here. Guys, any other questions? Obviously, Peter is a massive titan when it comes to technical SEO, so we're really in for a treat here. Any other questions, guys? Oi, let's go.
Well, it's actually less of a technical question, and it's more focusing on something you said earlier regarding the product page. You said focus on like actually driving conversions
Yeah.
with the content
User
rather
content.
than SEO, SEOE.
SEO, like, because we all know what SEO content
Yes,
looks like, right?
yes,
Like fluffy, I'm looking for a recipe and I'm reading
Yeah.
someone's life story kind
Yeah,
of stuff,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Like,
The question I have is, I mean, working with like a massive website like Daily Hi-Fi, you do have the luxury of,
oh,
you know,
I'm not-
putting,
I'm not
putting,
looking-
putting three dot points in a product, like
Yep.
in the description, and then still being able to rank for it. Is there, when it comes to
or like a smaller website.
small website, is there some sort of
So,
in between, some
okay,
sort of mix?
So here's what you do. That's why I said if you work in retail, so specifically retail is you're selling someone else's phone. So like JB Hi-Fi didn't make the Apple MacBook, right? Like then they don't have like people hammering hammers and like through the factory floor doing that. Same manufacturer's description as everyone else. So I work for small retail as well. So like I didn't modify the descriptions unless the product was important or there was an opportunity for it, right? So the products that we ranked for, like the only products that we had really true, unbelievable, irrefutable success for, like one called Christian Fay Eyebrows, which is like an eyebrow kit. A lot of people who have like cancer treatments and stuff like that, when they have hair loss, it's like I guess it's like a replacement eyebrow kit, that kind of stuff is quite popular. So I saw a gap there and I like basically rewrote the product description on top of the manufacturer's description. So like it was just like before features and benefits, whatever was there. I basically wrote something at the top, which is similar to the bullet points, something on the bottom that was a little bit more SEO-y. So like basically for smaller websites, prioritize, use the priority websites for clients to as justifications. Like see, when we resource these pages, these 3 pages, we actually did content work, we actually optimized, we actually did all these other tricks. They perform well versus the median page of the website. So this also can give you a starting off point for someone who's new to SEO, doesn't understand how resourcing or budgeting for SEO works for, especially if they're a small business or like SEO is like, there's a very limited opportunity for SEO for them. There might be like keywords that are too broad or like too many monsters out there for them to compete with. And like, it might not even be financially viable for them to even hire an agency because even if they succeed, it's actually their success level isn't actually paying the cost because it's too small. So that's where you actually have like, okay, that's the justification for it. Like focus on very small, easy. So like research, when you're a small business, that's where research pays off. That's where like opportunity, understanding gaps work. Because when I worked in a small business, I saw that Finn Lizzy, the only person who was like, all the other big retailers carried it, no one cared about it. But it was being advertised on TV. Like, you know, I even said to the retail manager at the time, we're not, like, she came to me in like August of one year and she said, oh, I think about getting rid of it. I'm like, don't do that. We literally just started ranking for it. Like, it's going to be number 1 or number 2 for like that. We're like, at least top retail in Australia for like this particular product, this Priceline and all these other companies that care. They're not like, it's just for them, it's just like another product ranking on their website. But for us, because it's got crazy search volume, because they have daytime TV, like on the shopping channel and all that kind of stuff. It's getting some search volume. I'm like, great, optimizing the categories. I'm optimizing the products themselves as well because there's opportunity there. And it became our 4th best-selling brand after Chanel, Estee Lauder, and Clinique versus our other 80 brands, which are like some of them Dior and all these kind of perfume brands, all this kind of stuff. Thin Lizzy, the little thing that you get at Priceline for like $20 or $40 or whatever, this foundation set that's like, people actually think it's a little bit crappy, but like basically that little foundation set was our best performing brand other than the monster of Chanel and Estee Lauder and Clinique. Like they're the ones that perform because I did the research, I saw the opportunity, and I actually allocated adequate resources internally to actually perform and get results from that. So those are the ones that we truly could get because we have no link authority. There was no link building there. There was nothing like that. That was all content. That was all structural. That was over optimizing a brand that people shouldn't care about, but there was an opportunity there to capture that as a bestseller. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, just to clarify, it was just, sorry. Yeah, I have heaps more questions about what you said, but just
We really need to.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
Take it offline.
Specifically, like with the conversion rates, the
Oh,
SEO
yeah.
content, you put basically you can read a little bit at the top, and then when like if you want to investigate more, you put more content.
Yeah. So like the primary purpose.
Sorry.
The primary purpose of a PDP page is to sell the phone. right? And the same thing with there's a reason why we don't put a wall of content. We don't have expandable text at the top. We actually don't. The reason why we don't have expandable text at the top, we don't have hyperlinks at the top, is we actually don't want to interfere with the person's experience with filtering the page or going to clicking the product. The job of the product listing page is for them to click. So the primary purpose was those little subcategory menus. That's the first purpose. Second purpose is the top products or the filters. So we actually you optimize the person who's reading content for the next sentence. You optimize people who's consuming the page in a hierarchy where they actually need to. You're optimizing for the next best experience. So you need to optimize for that because user experience really is an important factor. It's not, but the problem is it's not a direct factor, so that's why we can't talk about it, right? Because like Google doesn't directly measure bounce rate, but they aggregate that with like a weird pogo sticking thing and all this kind of stuff. They kind of get a feel for it, right? But like they kind of know when a website's popular and people revisit that SERP, like based on CTR, the amount of people who visited and all these other contributing factors. So user experience is super important for SEO. The problem is that we can't like give it an attributable line items, right? Because we can't like, I'll give you a perfect example for this, and this is not even my client. I was presenting to one of our clients, AMA Furniture, one of our big furniture clients, and we were doing research on why IKEA crushed it since October. I'm getting my years mixed up because it wasn't 2021, it was 2020, right? So IKEA was taking off. And we analyzed two pages. We compared I think it was the mattress page on Kmart versus the mattress page on IKEA. We went to archive.org and pulled up the IKEA page in September of 2019. I'm getting my years mixed up because it's all blur, COVID's all flying, and it's all like messing my brain. So IKEA page was structured like how we would structure SEO content, like text box, headlines, really long SEO content. After October of whatever that year was when they started taking off, what did I see? The SEO content's there, but it got pushed all the way to the bottom. It's like all the same. All the SEO stuff with content and hyperlinks were gone. But what changed? They have massive interactive, interactive things. The image was interactive. You clicked on a pillow, you brought up this thing. They had interactive galleries. They had this. Basically, it was an interactive joy. It was like one of the most amazing landing pages I saw for what was formerly a category page, but it actually became a landing page, this very category page. So it was only a PLP name, like page by structure. They actually basically gutted the PLP functionality and just turned it into a glorious user experience, like Wonderland for that particular IKEA page. And it basically had I think there was only, that page had 20, according to SEMrush anyway, 20 something pages before in the top 3, then it had 46 afterwards. So basically they're doubling the amount of keywords in the top 3 for that individual page. And it was way higher than AMite. And we basically said content was the same, page titles were very similar, all that kind of stuff, all the SEO stuff similar. They changed their UX, and that's what changed in the website. So UX is really, really important. It's like if you could go to archive.org, and if I have that example, I should put it in the slide. Give me a time machine. But basically, UX is incredibly important, and we saw that with IKEA's website. So if you got archive.org, check in IKEA's website way back when. It's September of probably the year before, so I'm guessing either 2020 or probably 2020. And then basically compared to how it is now, because it's glorious. And you actually, if you want to do research, it's a good example of seeing if something gains and keeps, like IKEA did in the Australian market, do that research because it actually gives you insight of SEO that you wouldn't think unless you saw it in a practical applied manner. Because you have to physically see, oh, this is why NerdWallet ranks for credit cards in the US, because they have all these little visual hyperlinks at the top of the page. It's actually a joy to click and go to where you want. The time to the actual result is actually very quick. Or that IKEA page I gave you an example, that came from original research. We were scratching our heads thinking, what is possible? And then we actually saw that page and well, this is it. This is UX. People must be loving IKEA. They probably do. They're loving IKEA. So that's probably why that page is so valuable now. It's just a flat out better page. It's hard to describe from an SEO standpoint, a metrics wise. But you as a human being knows that this is a superior page than everyone else. Out of the pages that's in Google, this is the one that deserves to be on top. And it's only if Google's smart enough to understand this. That's the question. Cool.
Mic drop.
Mic drop, it's property of the
I know.
office.
It's also very expensive. It looks
Way fancier than me. Guys, I'm going to cap it there because we've got a panel, and also I'm very mindful of the time, so we're going to maybe keep this a little bit short. So I'm going to invite Harry Sanders to the stage. If you guys want to get a drink, go grab one right now. Want to go to the bathroom? We're just going to take maybe about, yes. and food. Yeah, we're just going to take a really, really short break. All right, thanks so much, guys. Cue the music. Amazing. I can't.
We're still live streaming, right?
We are still live streaming.
Welcome to the Peter and Nick podcast.
Actually, I really want to do that.
Okay.